Hello, I'm Jackie Jones of Jones & Associates Law PC, your family fixer. And today we're talking custody exchanges during COVID-19. And I have my lovely helper, Mila. Say hi, Mila. Okay, so today I have already had 2 conversations with clients about custody exchanges, and they fall along some pretty typical ideas. The first one was, should we be exchanging at all during COVID-19? Well, in this case, I told them, the courts are basically saying, yes, exchanges still should happen. You should be self-isolating in your home. The other parent should be self-isolating in their home. You should exchange the child from a 6-foot social distancing sort of way and make sure they are wiped down and everything is secure and cleaned off. But you are still supposed to be doing your exchanges, right? I know it comes as a shock and a surprise to many of us, but children still have a right to see their parents. So yes, you should still be doing your custody exchanges, but there have been some special things going on. One of those special things is one of the people has 2 elderly people who have a number of health issues in their house. And they're not sure about what the practices in the other household are. And so I said, yes, you should be exchanging. However, if there is some special situation, I know one of the elderly people in the household had been recently hospitalized for a number of things. If the doctor says that this person has to be in more of an isolation or quarantine day period, my phone, maybe for a 14-day period. So for instance, if it says that, the doctor says he's coming home from the hospital, I want no one to leave or come into the space for 14 days or 30 days or whatever it is because of a vulnerable immune system, that would be a reason to not do a custody exchange. So in a case like that, I would say we're not going to exchange for custody. What we are going to do is we are going to set up Zoom calls. We're going to set up FaceTime. We're going to have more telephone interaction, and we're going to do makeup time later. But for that period of time that the doctor says, and which we may have a doctor's note for, that we will isolate just the specific situation and change the custody for that. So generally speaking, you are still doing custody exchanges. Another call I got today, however, was from someone else who was waiting for the custody exchange, and the other custodial parent just didn't show up. No call, no show. I don't think it was COVID related at all. That parent's just a jerk sometimes. They have bad custody stuff going on often. So I don't think that it was any issue at all with COVID. I think it was just generally bad behavior. So as we've talked about, the courts are open for certain emergency things. Generally, missing one custody exchange does not constitute an emergency, right? Not most of the time are the court's going to say that's an emergency. So we really have to talk about what things constitute an actual emergency wherein we would need to file an emergency custody petition. Perhaps a situation where the parent has missed multiple exchanges, where they're not responding to your phone calls, text messages, emails, where their lawyer doesn't know where they are either, where generally speaking, we don't know what's going on with our child during this time period. For a situation like that, it may, bless you, sweetie, it may make sense to file an emergency custody proceeding. Now, is that something that we're going to go into court for? Well, likely not. What's likely to happen then is if we have real concern about whether or not your child is safe or what's happening with your child or whether the other parent is using COVID-19 as an excuse to prevent your custodial time, the judge is likely to set up a telephonic conference. That telephonic conference is going to give us an opportunity to explain what has happened and why it has happened. So our presentation would be, our child is scheduled to be with me on this day from this time to this time for the last 2 exchanges. The child has not been there. I've not been able to contact my ex, and I have no idea what's going on with my child at all. The next explanation from the ex could be, I'm sorry, all of our phone circuits were cut off. We were unable to communicate, and I had developed a cough, and I thought that perhaps we should self-isolate for 14 days or quarantine because I had symptoms of COVID-19 because I was exposed at work and we were isolating. Now, obviously, you want to communicate as much as possible. You don't just want to unilaterally make decisions. So after we've talked about some of these examples that happened to me today, let's start from the beginning. Okay, here's the beginning. In the beginning, custody exchanges, as they are outlined by your custody order, should absolutely be followed during this time and all other times. My dog is really feeling kind of annoyed with me today. Sorry. Custody exchanges should be followed. Mila, come here. Okay. Somebody wants to be on screen today. So custody exchanges should be followed. We all know that. Now, here are some other things that we should be thinking about. When and where the exchanges happen. We want to try to stay out of public and busy spots as much as possible. If custody exchanges are happening at one of your houses, that may be fine. The best thing to do, however, may be to send the child outside. The other parent meets the child outside at the step or something. The two parents do not necessarily need to have any physical contact with one another. Yes, you are sharing the child. So, yes, if the child has something, you may both get it. However, the child should have things at both houses, so the child shouldn't have to do things like take clothes or items or whatever from one house to the other. But if there are things they have to take, you can make sure they're washed and sanitized prior to going. It helps to keep everything wiped down, both before and after the exchange, right? Just to make sure there's no cross-contaminants. Two, if you are meeting in a public place, you may want to think about whether it's appropriate to meet in that public place or whether it would make more sense to meet in a private home or something like that, right? So if you meet in a private home, like I said, outside, then you're not where lots of other people and their droplets have been. If you do have to meet in a private public place, do it somewhere where you can socially distance. Let's say if you're meeting at a police station like some people do, you want to meet in the parking lot, open the door, allow the child to go from one car to the other, and without being too close to each other or any other people. We used to have people meet at other public convenience stores, for instance. Well, many of those are not open anymore because of the COVID-19 crisis. So it defeats the entire purpose of the public meeting spot. So if you need a public meeting spot and you cannot perhaps go to the local Wawa, 7-Eleven, or wherever you used to go, then you may move to a place like a police station, or hospital, which are places that are going to be open. Obviously, you don't want to actually go into a hospital because of all the stuff going on, right? But you want to go someplace where there are going to be people present and witnesses if that is necessary for your custody exchange. You want to make this as easy as possible. You know that children are often concerned about things, they're hearing things, and depending on your child's age, you want to take their age and their sensibilities into account when you determine what you should do as far as your custody cases. So for instance, perhaps you usually exchange on Fridays because of schooling, and Friday to Monday or something like that. While the child's not going to school, you may decide to let the child do cyber school at one place or the other. Or you may decide that if I usually pick up after school, maybe I'll do it morning and they can do their cyber schooling with me instead. You may also want to consider having less exchanges. So for instance, I have a client, they exchange on Wednesdays, go back on Thursday, and then when it's that weekend, it's Friday to the following Sunday or Monday, whatever. I suggested, or Friday to Sunday. I said, why not, instead of doing that, why not just get the child Thursday to Sunday or get the child Friday to Monday instead of doing that additional exchange where the two of you have to meet both on Wednesday night and then again on Thursday night for the exchange. Think sensibly about how we can make this so that we're spending less time out. Also consider things about what do we need to exchange. Are there special needs that a child has, special food, special activities? Perhaps one of you can cash app the other and say you are already going to be going out and getting these things for the child. Why not just double it and get enough for both houses so both of us don't have to be out and putting ourselves at risk? Find ways to make your custody exchange more helpful for both you and for your children, because this is a lot of anxiety for them as well. They have a lot of situations that have them concerned. So as we go through this process, you just want to be thinking about how to make it easier, not how to make it more difficult. Today is a really quiet day on here. I'm not getting a lot of people talking, so I'm just going through. Okay. Some other things to consider when it comes to your custody exchange. If for any reason you need to make changes, you want to put that in writing, whether it be email, text message, however you're communicating. You want to make sure that there's a notice of when, thanks for the like, you want to notice when you actually are making this choice. So you don't want it to be like, I told you that I couldn't do it on so-and-so, and the other one says, well, you said maybe, or you didn't tell me enough time. Like, put it in writing so we know. You also want to be considerate. So if your proposal actually takes away time from the other parent, you want to make sure that you actually propose makeup time, right? I get it. Yes, it's COVID and it's not your fault that things have to change this week or whatever. That doesn't mean that you're not benefiting from having additional time. The other person is not suffering from losing that time with the child who also needs that other parent. So make sure that in your proposals, you always include makeup time or some kind of way to compensate for the lost time with the child and the parent. It's just good common sense. It's just good common courtesy, okay? Now, what else I want you to be thinking about is, what will this mean for long-term solutions as we try to navigate COVID-19? What do I mean by that? We all know this is not going to be over in 2 weeks. I think we all know that we could still be lingering with some traces of this or some traces of problems related to this well into the summer. So we should be thinking about how we can do what's best for our child, not following the custody order because you have the power, but actually thinking about what's right for your child. So what we should be thinking about is, what do I do come June, July, August? What does this mean for homeschooling? If the other parent has been actively involved in school situations, should we be changing the days of the week that we do this so that this child can handle some of the school burden? If one parent doesn't have internet access and we know they have to do online school, I'm going to change my day to allow them to have this day so we can make sure online schooling is done. Everything you should be doing as far as custody exchanges right now should be to benefiting the child and making them feel more secure in a time where we are in a very uncertain time in this world. So your job as a parent is to make your child feel happier and healthier, even in the midst of these struggles. I know that with my children, they are facing different things than some of yours. We're not worried about things like custody exchanges for young children, but we are worried to think about things like junior prom, which apparently in my district was just moved to June. But with another friend, it was they took it off altogether. Their child won't be having a junior prom, and that could still happen to us as well. We should always be trying to make our children secure and safe and finding alternate things for them to do or ways for them to enjoy themselves. I encourage my children to go with me to the dog park. They refuse. I said, let's take a walk around. They refused. I suggested we play a game at home. They refused. But I got them with movie night. That's all I'm saying. I just keep going. But at any rate, this time, as with any other time, we need to make sure that the children are first. They are primary with custody and with everything else. So I've been talking nonstop for about 15 minutes now. I'm going to give you a few minutes to drop some questions here if you have any. Drop your questions now, and I will try to answer them. But let's just go over what we've done so far. So 1, have your custody exchanges anyway. 2, if you have some kind of doctor's note or health issue that will prevent you from having the custody exchange, please make sure that you have an alternate plan available. 3, show up. Show up. And if you can't, please make sure you put these things in writing, letting people know via text or email what your proposed change is. And what I have not talked about yet is that if there is an emergency, we can still file with the court. Why am I telling you this? Because our courts are still open for emergency custody things. Obviously, we can't leave children unsafe or unprotected, but it has to be a true emergency. Now, what many other courts are doing is giving orders about custody exchanges. I think Chester County already says basically do it anyway. With very limited exceptions, do your custody exchange anyway. In Delaware County, they're saying we are handling some emergency petitions, but it better be a true emergency. And our first line of defense is talking to the lawyers via telephone conference. We do a telephone conference, and after that, then they can make some determinations about what needs to happen next. The other options that are going on have been, after telephone conferences, some kind of team meeting. Finally, if it's a very, very, very important situation, they will have a limited hearing in person, and this is very limited. So most things we're trying to get resolved prior to any kind of on-the-record hearing. But at any rate, if you are having questions or concerns about your custody, I suggest you talk to the other parent first and then talk to your lawyer. Why do I say that? Because you have to co-parent at some point, and I can't do it for you. Your other lawyers can't do it for you. You really have to try to work these things out. If you can't work things out during a time like this, then we're going to be having a lot of court when this is all over. So again, now, like any other time, your children come first. So if you're having issues with your custody exchange, Think about what would make them happy first. Think about what their needs are first. Do whatever you can to lessen the anxiety for your children as you continue to co-parent together during COVID-19 or any other crisis. So if you have questions, you go ahead and drop me something. If you were watching on the repost, just hashtag repost your questions, hashtag repost, and then put your questions so that I can try to answer them later. And I am Jackie Jones of Jones & Associates Law, PC, your family fixer. Thank you for joining us today.